cap card started malfunctioning. But anyway, let's go back to the load restore point just in case anyone missed it. So anyway, there's two ways you could do this first part right here. First off, you could go like this and start jumping over here. Now, if you see the Atlas come out, that means you pretty much successfully got the bull to be despawned. Now, of course, despawns don't always work. One way you could definitely tell if it did work is if Scott came out and then Bull followed him right after that, and you don't see the Atlas. Now, normally there would be 3 enemies on screen, but since barrels and crates count as enemies, that kind of sets up some despawns for later, which I'll show. And of course, the other option, of course, you can also do is if you don't want to take a chance of despawning enemies, you do this. 2 punches, 3 headbutts. 1 punch, 2 headbutts. Move over here, do spinning pile driver. So anyway, once you do one of these 2 parts, you'll engage an Atlas, Mark, and another bull, and then followed up by Elias and Jack. Of course, fighting Atlases can be pretty difficult. So as you can see, I took a lot of damage there. I'll go ahead and create a restore point right there. So be very wary when you're fighting against Atlases and Johnnies. They can build up a load of damage pretty quickly. Now for this next part, we want to do this. So right there, I got a despawn right there. Now you might want to do a reverse jump when the Robert appears. Fortunately, that was just pretty bad. Let me see if I can do a better example. Okay, that was bad. Wasn't in chain throw range, unfortunately. But technically, you could also do that. Jump over here. You can also do a reverse jump, just in case the Robert does try to get behind you. I mean, launch its jump attack. Now, there is also another method you could use to pretty much get through this next part right here. So if you don't want to do the chain throw right here, just get rid of this Elijah. Of course, it's a little bit faster, just in case you don't want to take a risk of doing the despawn chain throw trick. So we're going to go ahead and reload this part again. Now keep in mind that if you're playing on higher difficulties, namely hard or expert, you will see an Elliot appear along with the Elijah Mick. So we're going to go through right here, do this. Just get rid of these enemies. Try to group the other ones if you can. We'll go ahead and create a restore point right here, because if you're playing on easy mode, this will be the first time you'll encounter the Endories. So you definitely want to be on the upper plane right here. So technically when you're fighting the Endories, they will always appear on the plane that your character is on. So basically I was right there when he emerged. So I'm going to redo this again and show you what happens when I decide to move downward. He actually stayed up. Weird. Normally the Endories will always spawn wherever your character is. Oh, that Endory actually spawns in the upper part. Weird. Most of the time the Endories will always spawn wherever your character is. And one of the unique characteristics about the Endoris is that they will always line up wherever your character is. So basically right there, unlike the first game where the Endoris will always charge at you wherever you're at, they will always charge at you whenever you're on the same plane as them. So technically what I just did there was do a reverse jump just before they try to contact me with their chest bump. They will only charge wherever your character is last standing at, for the most part. But if you jump too late, you will pretty much get the receiving end of the chest bump, pretty much. But anyway, on easy mode, the Endoris are a little bit more easier to deal with than hard or expert. Unfortunately, in hard and expert, though, they will have like mountains of HP to wipe out. And you want to stand right here by the time you go to the next part right here. You can also try to trap the enemies near the wall if you're not very good at grouping. But technically you can always counter the Endori's chest bump attack by doing the reverse body splash or just doing a reverse jump just before their charge hits you. So either method works. I'm going to go ahead and create a restore point right here to start the next part. When you start off this stage, just go ahead and take out the Smic with 2 punches and 3 headbutts. Wait for these guys to line up. Knock these guys out. Get Johnny in place. If you can get those punches, you're very lucky. Start moving forward by jumping. Throw a jump kick just in case the Leon does try for a leap attack. Fortunately, I was not very lucky. But yeah, it's kind of very annoying when you're doing infinites on other enemies and you're dealing with the Endoris, especially if you hit them with the very tail end of your fist of Haggar's punch hitbox range. They'll usually move back and then go for a charge attack, which is pretty annoying. Let's try that again. Of course, not everything will go according to plan. Now, if you have plenty of life, you can do the chain joys to get some additional damage. Lucky this time. Now, what I just did right there, even though my character wasn't actually standing over that item, Haggar was able to pick it up. For some reason, whenever he throws his body blow punches, his sprite will move forward a bit, and in some cases, it'll pick up the item right next to Haggar, even though he's not standing over it. But anyway, that could have been a little bit more different than what I would normally do. I'll try it one more time to give you guys a general idea of how I do this. Yeah, just keep jumping. Try to take these guys out quickly. Wow, he actually countered my reverse body splash. Not real. Okay, I rarely get grabbed by the Endoris. That is very unfortunate there. But anyway, I'll go ahead and create another restore point right there. But technically, the whole point is to hit the Endori with the reverse charge. I mean, the reverse body splash. I mean, under normal circumstances, you can actually counter that for the most part. But unfortunately, I was too late, unfortunately. So for this next part, you want to do this. Headbutt the 2-punch plus 3 headbutts. Do the same on this one. And unfortunately, I got tagged. But yeah, the atlases are pretty annoying. Normally, I usually have a better setup than what I do. Usually, the atlases will probably be the last ones you'll deal with due to their annoying blocking. Sometimes you will get some damage on them and break through their guard, but most of the time they will block everything you throw at them, other than jump attacks and grabs, grapple strikes, throws, etc. So for this next part, intercept this area right here, break this barrel. Now you have to deal with Grandpa and Dory, Scott, and Elick. Stand right here, and that's pretty much it for second part of round 2. Now, technically, this is actually one of the more important parts of doing this part, because you do need to set up a despawn. But getting the alignment is pretty difficult. So basically right there, I was able to successfully not only despawn Scott by doing that throw on the mech, but I also despawned a Johnny that would normally be there. And that's because that crate was left intact by the time I made it over to this force point. So in reality, I actually despawned 2 enemies. So as long as you don't break the crate by the time you get to this part, you'll actually get rid of Johnny, which is a definite guarantee. Now, it can be somewhat difficult for each speedrun playthrough you do this on, because Scott will not always be in the position of getting hit by that throw. Sometimes you'll have to take a guess as to where the enemy is going to appear. So when these enemies appear, wipe those guys out, jump attack this guy. Now, for some odd reason, the screen doesn't move forward if you're, like, still jumping, which I just did. Just use Chain of Infinites on this guy. Unfortunately, this enemy decided to... Another thing to keep in mind, that when you're doing the spinning pile driver, if any of the Roberts or Leons try to do their leap attack on you, you can also use the spinning pile driver to protect yourself. One big change about Haggar's pile driver now that it's a spinning pile driver, it actually gives you more of a hitbox and protection against aerial attacks, and gives you more protection when you come straight down from it. So if any enemies are near your character, when you do that move, they'll get hit on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and create a restore point right here. Now, normally if you're playing this on a marathon pace or whatever, you will need to break that crate, because unfortunately with my health pretty low at this point, I really cannot set up this despawn. But I am going to try to set it up though. So, this is what happens if I choose not to break that crate. So, this is what happens when I choose not to break the crate. Now, normally there would be a bowl right there, right next to that Scott, when making Scott appear. But because I chose not to break the crate that had the barbecue, though, bowl gets removed. Now, I don't recommend this doing this with less health. If you do get to this point of the game where your health is very low, I recommend breaking the crate and get that health up rather than trying for this despawn. Of course, you will have to deal with 2 enemies at a time instead of dealing with 3, because there's only 5 enemies for that force point. It just depends on what your health is at that point. So, I'm going to show you the safety strap for this in case you do have low health. Now, normally I can't get the infinite on Atlas. Sometimes you could actually get them, but just don't expect to get it all the time. Oh, good grief, I've been doing this wrong. Oh, that was bad. My fault. Okay, so if you do have low health, just go right up here. Ah, that was bad. You do have to watch out for the Elic if he does just decide to use the charge attack. Just make sure your character's up here. Pick up that barbecue, and you'll pretty much have 3 enemies coming out, and then you would have to deal with 2 of them. Okay, so anyway, we're going to start moving forward now. We are going to set up that despawn trick now. Actually, I can't do that because my health is pretty low at this point. So we're going to have to deal with 3 enemies now instead of 2. Alright. So basically, depending on your health, you will need to break that crate. But if you're near full life by the time you go to this point, for the most part, I recommend keeping that crate intact and just take out all the enemies that come into it there. That way you can just deal with 2 of the enemies, and instead of having to deal with 3, would just happen right here. So this next part right here, which is my final part of part 2, is taking on Freddy. Freddy is pretty much the boss of round 2, France. And his fighting list is pretty similar to the Andori's. The only difference is that he now has a rising knee, which the Andori's cannot do. And because he just did that... Now, if he does do the rising knee, he goes out of bounds. One of the interesting characteristics about the Andori's, as well as Freddy, is that they cannot attack when they're out of bounds. But they can attack once a bit of their body is showing out from out of bounds, though. But technically, this strat only works if Freddy does decide to go for the rising knee, almost out of the gate. Now, there is some ways you can deal with Freddy for this. Okay, that was not what I wanted. We'll redo that again. Because Haggar can do the infinite on Freddy, but there's a small problem. Oh, come on, why is one of my D-pad tonight? Honestly. I'm trying to set up an infinite and I can't get that going. Because right there, what you just saw, he did try to go for the rising knee while I was doing the infinite. Technically, in most cases, Haggar cannot really infinite all the bosses due to the fact that the speed of his punch is not as good as Maki's and Carlos's. And in this case, Freddy can do the rising knee. He can also hit me with his punches, which is pretty nasty. But technically, that's one strat you could use against Freddy. If you do decide to use the infinite against him, just keep in mind that he will break out of that infinite with the rising knee if he goes for it. Now, this is what I would normally do against him, since I can't really do the infinite. Just go in for a few punches, do this. Darn it. I really hate when my button inputs get eaten. Let me set it up again. So basically what you can do right here is just do this instead. Now, Freddy is programmed to pretty much do a charge attack if your character is on the same plane as he is. So basically, what you can do is just make him just charge at you, and he just eats up all the damage right there. So technically you have two ways of dealing with Freddy with Haggar. One, you can try to go for the infinite, which is a little bit more faster, gets a little bit more damage, but you also run a risk of being hit with a rising knee, and he gets out of that while being knocked down. Of course, the method I just showed you is a bit more risky because we do want to get as much damage in before the reinforcements arrive. I only do a few punches right there, mostly to make sure he doesn't break the infinite. Try to lure the enemies in place. Just go for changeoys. And that's mostly to deal with any reinforcements coming at me. And basically, we just bait Freddy with changeoys and chain throws as well. So that's pretty much how you deal with Freddy. Now, for my final part of this tutorial, I'll go ahead and set up a create restore point. Let me get me some water real quick. So anyway, this final part of the tutorial for part 2 is the bonus stage, which is break the car. So once the time starts, you want to position yourself right here and do this, do the lariat multiple times until one side of the car becomes unbreakable. Now, a unique feature of Haggar's lariat is that unlike Carlos and Maki's extra joys, Haggar's lariat can strike both sides of the car. And he's the only character that can do that, believe it or not. So once you destroy that, pick this up, and then do 5 hits on this side. Now, normally I could get it done within 19 seconds, but unfortunately this was not very fast. But technically, I usually pick up a weapon so I can break that side a little bit more quicker. I haven't really seen what it does with the regular punches, but normally it works for me. Now, basically what you just saw there, within anywhere from 17 to 19 seconds in-game time for that bonus round, I can pretty much get a lot of points quicker, instead of having like 14 to 13 seconds left on that clock. So we're going to do this again just to get a refresher. Now, sometimes I could break it within 19 seconds or 18 seconds, but there's just some times where you cannot just get, the car is just the way it is. Alright, I'll try it one more time. It doesn't look like the game's going to let me get a 19-second car break, unfortunately. But yeah, that's technically what you'll pretty much see when you're doing the bonus round. Usually with Haggar, you can get, with this strat, you can pretty much get that done within 19 or 17 seconds with him. The fastest I've got with either Carlos or Maki is pretty much either 15 to 13 seconds with him. And the downside is that their specials, unfortunately, do not hit both sides at once. It only hits one side of the car when they come around for the third part of that swing. Pretty much. But Haggar's the only character that can pretty much break this car very quickly by himself with that lariat.